Hello and welcome. It's Dave Nabby, and I've been asked to talk today on the topic of communication for professionals. Professionals like accountants, lawyers, doctors, engineers, architects have a different obligation and requirement for communication. So I've been asked by some CPAs to talk about this, some CPA students. Why can't I just act and communicate like I do at home with my family and my friends? A lot of people bring their personal communication style into the office. So today I'm going to talk about 4 things that you need to do differently in a professional CPA office. So what separates professionals? Why are professionals different? Well, professionals, especially these 5, come from the ancient English common law tradition of having an extra fiduciary duty to their clients, to always act in the best interest of their clients. So they're held to a higher standard by the country, by the laws of the country actually, and by their professions. And so they have a higher standard of communication. So, for example, what would you say in Canada right now? It's the season of the Santa Claus parades, and we also just legalized cannabis. Wouldn't you be surprised if you're watching the Santa Claus parade with your children, all of a sudden there's your doctor, or your lawyer, or your professional accountant jumping up. They've indulged a little too much in cannabis, tackling Santa Claus, yelling to the people in the crowd, "I have the cheapest legal rates for mortgages in the city, come and see me." Well, if you're a regular person in a regular job, you're probably not going to get fired for that. It's going to be embarrassing. Your employer might talk to you. If you're a teacher, you install air conditioning, you work in an office as a bookkeeper, it's probably not too much. People might laugh even. But if you're an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist, this is not the kind of behavior that's expected of you. And people are going to look at you and say, "Oh my God, that's a lawyer that's doing that?" And they're going to lose respect for the profession. So that's why professions have an extra duty, and you have to be careful to act a certain way so not to bring the profession in disrepute. Act professionally. So what does that mean? So your clients expect you to maybe dress a little different, to have a different kind of office, but definitely how you communicate. Nobody wants to have their lawyer respond to them when you ask them a question, a legal request. If your lawyer responds, "Whatever, who knows what, I don't really know. Why are you asking me such a dumb question?" I mean, if your lawyer responds like this, then probably you're going to put them a complaint to the legal society against them. If you respond to your spouse or your family members in this way, this might be a normal method of communication. So the first thing to understand for people entering a profession, especially CPA, where you have clients, if you're a young college student and you're just entering, or you're a recent immigrant, in both cases you have lots of knowledge, you have lots of things you want to say, but you must communicate differently in your professional life than your personal life. So that's the first thing to know. So a few months ago, I put a post on LinkedIn actually, and I was starting 2 new social enterprises, and so I said, if there are any recent immigrants to Ottawa, the city that I'm in, who would like to learn to become a Canadian CPA, learn our practices, get work experience, I'll train you and get you certified in software, I'll get you certified as a CPA, I'll work with you and provide all this for free. If there's anybody interested, just message me so that I can confirm the meeting, which will be held at 123 Slater Street, and it was on a certain time and date. So that was the message I posted. 60 people responded. So about a third of them either commented on my post, "Hey, I'm interested," or they phoned me, or they emailed me. One guy phoned me 10 times in 2 days. Left me messages. I didn't answer his call. The remaining 2/3 I looked at their profile. They messaged me as I'd asked them to. And I looked at their LinkedIn profile and I told them I spotted something wrong. Everybody has something wrong. In a few cases where there wasn't something wrong, I made something up that was wrong. And I told them, hey, I found an error. Could you correct it? So it was a simple request, right? Only 4 people out of the 60 did this process correctly. So this was a test. I'd ask them to message, and I asked them to respond and correct an error in their LinkedIn profile. Only 4 people did this. So the 4 people that actually messaged me, and then I replied to them and said, hey, there's this error in your LinkedIn profile. It was usually something small, like they had a couple of dates wrong, or they said one said he lived in Ottawa, but then he said he was working in Winnipeg. I mean, there were just some things that people don't keep their LinkedIn profiles perfect for some reason. You know, so all they needed to do, the 4 of them said, thank you, I've spotted the error, I've corrected it, now may I come to the meeting. These are the only 4 people that got invited to the meeting out of the 60. So let me explain the second and third things that you need to know about professional communications come from this example. So the second thing is, make sure that you understand the request. As a professional, you're dealing with clients. You can't tell them what you think their problem is. You have to understand their problem. Everyone has intricacies. There's details that are important. You have to be able to understand the client. So 20 people out of my ad, in my example, ignored my request to message. Now you might think this is a little thing. They commented, or they emailed, or they phoned. Sure, in real life, in your personal life, this is a small thing. But this was actually a test on whether they could follow instructions or not, whether they were listening. Message. Everybody knows what a message is. So I specifically said message. So why is this important in a CPA or a professional office? It's because if a client asks you to message them and instead you phone them or you write them a letter, they're going to get mad and then they're not going to want to be our client anymore. Or what if the CRA, the tax authority in Canada, what if the CRA asks you to mail a letter to respond to a question about a client? Say, mail a letter to our PEI office, Prince Edward Island office. And instead, you phone the Sudbury office and you talk to somebody and say, hey, can you make a note on the file? Well, in this case, there's going to be a problem likely. Our client's going to miss the deadline and they're going to incur a fine. You can't do things your own way. You have to listen carefully. You can't worry about why. You just have to follow instructions and listen. So being a professional means being specific. The work you're doing is detailed. So for example, if you're a teacher, as I've been, you can make a mistake in class. You know, sometimes when you're teaching a class over and over and over, you memorize the things, you have your mind on something else, you say something wrong, you're thinking of the next thing. You know, I might be teaching and saying, okay, when I write a check, obviously the cash balance goes up, and I'll keep going and going and going. And I'll think later, oh, wait, of course the cash balance goes down when you write a check. Everybody knows that. It was just a misstatement. Nothing happened. Maybe a couple of students laughed. And later somebody corrected me and I had a chance to say, yeah, sorry, of course I meant the cash balance goes down when you write a check. But if you're a surgeon and you're standing at the base, at somebody's feet and looking at them and saying, oh, I have to operate on the left leg, and you're standing at their feet and you look, you're busy, you're stressed, you think, oh, the left leg is that one, let's start operating, and you amputate his right leg instead. I mean, that's a big problem. So when you're a professional, details are important. So how do you practice understanding the request? So number one, listen, don't talk. It's an old saying in Canada, we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So listen, listen, listen. How do you do this? Active listening. So look this up. Active listening means when somebody's talking, you're, okay, I'm nodding my head, shows that I'm listening. You might repeat words. If I say, go and meet the client on Thursday at 10 o'clock, you might say to me, okay, Thursday. This shows that you're listening actively. Clarify with questions. Oh, did you mean this Thursday? The 15th? Yeah, that means you're clarifying, so you're showing you're listening actively. Or you might rephrase. So you want me to meet the client at their office on Thursday the 15th. Okay, this is active listening. This shows clearly that you've understood the request. All right, so that's number 2. Make sure you understand the request. Number 3, this is a big problem, especially with intelligent people. When you're coming to work in a professional office, it's really critical. People react instead of respond. So I worked overseas in cultures where communication is a blood sport. I mean, it's a matter of pride and competition. It's loud, confrontational, you interrupt the other person. It's a very intense process. But as a professional, what you need is you need to quickly find facts, right, to solve an issue. There's no time for this style of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth emotion. You know, you need to respond professionally. So the first part about this is to watch your tone and your body language. So for example, if you say to me, all right, you know, keep talking, whatever, come on, keep talking, yeah. That's a little different than if you're talking to somebody and you say, okay, wow, that's interesting. Tell me more. So the body language and the tone of your conversation is really important. Number 2, don't interrupt. Wait for the other person to stop. As a college professor and as a corporate trainer and presenter, I have a lot of techniques that I use to stop people from talking, from stopping them interrupting me. There's nothing worse than having a class full of 50 or 60 people or doing a presentation to 100 people, and we've all been to school, you know, there's that one person or 2 people that always stand up and talk and talk and talk and ask 10 questions, and they just have a need to be heard. So there's a professional way that presenters have to stop these people. So don't interrupt. The third part of this is assumptions. So when you're reacting instead of responding, you're making assumptions. It's kind of the fight or flight response. You're hearing something that you don't like, and you're assuming that they're saying something for a reason, and so you make a response. You just react. You say, oh, so you're not going to help me. So you don't understand me. No, you're not listening to me. All these kinds of things are not useful, and they're not professional way of communicating. You should never say these. So what you need to do is be self-aware. This is a big concept for people new into the profession, is the need to become self-aware. So what does this mean? You have to be aware of your tone, your body language, whether you're interrupting, whether you're making assumptions. So back to my ad, you know, the 36 people who messaged me correctly but failed in the responses was a mix of these. I got a lot of argumentative responses back, you know. No, my profile's not wrong. I checked it. I like how it is. Where's the mistake? Some people were condescending. You know, they said, you don't understand what I wrote, which is an interesting way of thinking about things. Or they didn't reply. So these things are all unprofessional. So number 3, make sure you respond instead of react. The fourth thing that's important for communicating as a professional is to don't overthink. Just respond. So when you're working in a professional office, there's a lot of busy work that has to get done, right? So you have a million details that you need to deal with, and there isn't time to discuss why for everything. So if you're working in a busy office, and especially if you're new, so this is targeted to new college graduates entering the profession or recent immigrants who are new to Canada. You need to have the understanding that you're learning and that you're new for the first days, weeks, maybe months, until you earn the respect, until you prove that you're a good listener and that you can follow instructions, then you won't be respected. So the first thing you need to do, the first thing about communication, is that you want to be able to be respected by people, by your clients and coworkers. So you need to just do it and not discuss why. We're all busy, and if someone needs to discuss everything and argue everything and give their point of view about everything, or they make excuses as to why they didn't get something done, or they blame other people, then you're not suited to a professional CPA office work environment. So when you're new, what should you do? So the tool, one of the techniques I recommend is the 24-hour rule. If there's something you really need to say, now is not the time. We're trying to get the task done. This thing needs to be delivered to the client at 11 o'clock and it's 10:30. We got 15 minutes of work and it takes 15 minutes to get it to them. So we need to just get it done. Now's not the time to discuss, hey, why are we using UPS for all these things? Isn't that costing a lot of money? We just need to get it done. So the 24-hour rule, I got this from when I was coaching sports. When every parent thinks that I, as the coach, hated their child, didn't play them, and their 6-year-old kid is not going to get a hockey scholarship because I didn't play them enough in the last game. So what I told all the parents when they would come screaming at me after every game that I wronged their child, 24-hour rule. If you still feel this strongly 24 hours from now, call me. No contact for 24 hours from the start of a game. If you cool off, you might realize, talk to your spouse, talk to a neighbor, yeah, it wasn't a big deal, the coach was doing his best, he's a volunteer. Then you save yourself an embarrassing conversation. But if for some reason you still need to talk about it, you think, yeah, that was an important point, then you call up the person and say, hey, remember that conversation we had yesterday? I wanted to talk to you. I had a point to make about something. And then we sit down and we talk. We say, okay, let's do this tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We make an appointment. So this is the most important thing. Just do stuff when you're new and talk to the person after the next day. Maybe there's a weekly meeting. If it's a systemic issue that you think you've spotted in the office, it can wait for the weekly meeting. Great. So that was the 4 things that we have. And lastly, I just want to say these are the 4 keys to being a professional communication. Lastly, I just want to say that these are the same whether it's in person or on social media. Whoops, I lost my little song here. And same rules apply, same 4 things. Number 1, forget your personal style. Communicate as a professional. Number 2, understand the request. Listen, don't talk, and use active thinking. Number 3, respond, don't react. Be self-aware of your tone, your body language. And number 4, just do it, the 24-hour rule. Otherwise, there's lots of communication breakdowns. It's always the same. Communication breakdown.